to connect with the good spirits, with God, our Master, all the good forces of the universe, to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this moment. But also thank you for your unconditional presence, love and care for all of us. At this time, we ask you to help us to connect, to be present, to be mindful, to trust the guidance, the support of the invisible world in our work, in our sincere desire to help, to grow, to contribute with the little knowledge that we can grasp at this moment. So bless us all, our friend Daniel. As together we deliver this conversation today with all of you, asking at this time permission to begin our meeting today. Thank you, and so be it. All right, so today, as you know, we have here Dan Assisi, right from California. So I'm going to bring him big on our screen here so we all can see. Yep, there you go. So Dan, welcome. Good morning again. I think most of the people that we have here today know you. But why don't you introduce yourself? Because people online are going to be watching. And so who are you?
That's a great question. It's a question that we're all asking ourselves. Can you hear me okay? I have my air conditioning on.
We hear you fine. Very well.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am someone that, like you guys over there on the other side of the country, I'm in San Diego here, California, is trying to learn a little bit more about myself and try to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and a little bit better tomorrow than I'm today. And I think that the most amazing tool that I have found to make that happen is spiritism, or at least the perspective that spiritism brings me. And so one of my great joys is to do these kinds of things, is to talk to people about this, because I benefit greatly from it, to be completely honest with you. I learned a lot. And I have a pleasure of engaging with my friend Suzana here, in many different ways for many different years now. And I've had a chance to visit you guys before too. So I'm really excited about that. So whenever I can, I try to make time to engage with this kind of stuff, talking about our spiritual selves, having conversations such as this one. And so I'm excited to be here with you today.
Okay, great. So as all of you know, we're going to go over a few questions. The topics today include family, youth, education. So we're going to start the conversation, but please, it's a lot more fun if you participate. So if you have any comments or any questions as we go through this today, feel free to join in, raise your hand. We'll give you an opportunity to talk and to ask questions. But I always like to start from the very beginning and the very basics, because like right here, I have a number of people who have been coming to the center, who are in study groups, but maybe someone is listening to us today and it is in the very beginning of understanding spiritism and the concept. So let's just touch on that to get us started. So I'm going to ask Dan, what is the spiritual meaning of family? Why life in family is so important for the improvement of society and personal evolution? So basically, let's try to frame the idea of family in the Spiritist view, its importance, its meaning, and how we tie that into evolution.
Yeah, there's so much in there, right? I should probably start by saying that I think so. One of the things that I've been grappling with, Susanna, quite a bit, in the past couple of months, is thinking about how to best see things spiritually and what spiritism brings us. And I think I'm reaching the conclusion that one of the challenges we have sometimes is we try to think about the spiritual world from our worldly perspectives when we really should be thinking about the worldly perspectives through our spiritual lens, right? And so in my mind, there's like two types of family. The type of family that we think is our family because we're thinking just physically, and then there is a spiritual component to it, right? And so I think that we can all agree that from a day-to-day perspective, family are those people that are next to us that we were born into and that give us lots of opportunities to grow and develop ourselves, or perhaps are hard on us and that we might be super excited about, but not always, right? And that is our limited physical perspective. Now, spiritually, I think this is where it gets really interested, which is this is the group of people that, based on our previous experiences together or not in different lifetimes, will offer us the best possible circumstances and opportunities for us to learn things that we need to learn, right? And so those are sort of like almost competing perspectives sometimes, because when I put my spiritual glasses on, I can see things that I normally would not notice when I'm just thinking about my day-to-day life, right? So family, Spiritism tells us, is that landing pad that gives us all that we need to learn from this lifetime. And that has a lot to do with relationships and how do we see the world, how do we deal with each other. We know that there's, I don't know about you guys, but there's always somebody in our family that is either the odd person out, or that person that goes against the grain, or that drives everybody nuts. And I joke around sometimes saying that if your family doesn't have one of those, you're probably it. You just don't know. But there's always something, right, going on in families, and sometimes that's really taxing. But that is really great from a spiritual perspective, which means that we are forced to deal with that and learn how to behave and how to be kind to each other and work things out in a smaller arena before we go out into the world and do things. And the spirits are very emphatic when they tell us that if it were not for family, we would have a recrudescence, they say it, right? Like we would be brute again. We would lose that sensibility because we would just be more self-centered. Family forces us to know our limits, to deal with other people, with their preferences, their shortcomings. So family is an awesome learning tool. The problem is that sometimes we don't want the learning, we just want the comfort, right? And so it rubs us the wrong way. But families is a great place for us to grow from. The question is how we're going to do it and what kind of lessons we have there to help us figure the piece out.
Yeah, I think it takes, as you said, the ability to put the spiritual lenses on to be able to see things from this perspective. And this is really what Spiritism does for us, is add a new way of looking at things. I'm going to share that today I struggle some with, sometimes I feel like within the Spiritist movement, there's a little bit of romanticism when we talk about families, in the sense of like, oh, this is a great thing, and it's like, it's all good, it's all pretty, and also, and then you add to it the whole social media illusion, and then often you find people that will be dwelling on, am I family the only dysfunctional family in the world, because everybody else seems to be getting along so well, and look at all these families traveling together and having a wonderful time together, and everything looks so pristine and perfect, and here I am like really, really struggling every single day. I find myself to be very sober when it comes to that and being able to make this separation, but I will say that not 100% of the time. And it becomes sometimes a zone of disturbance and anxiety and anguish and all that. So I just, I think that this is something important for us to keep in mind, make this distinction between what social media is doing these days in this realm, and also understand that, like you said, it is a place where we are going to reincarnate with the people who are absolutely the best for our spiritual needs. And we all going to go into our struggles and battles. Um, there are our mission. It is basically life's invitation and say, hey, this is your task here, right? This is your best opportunity for improvement because of the intensity of these relationships. You know, you can say, well, I have relations at work, I have relations at the Spiritist Center, but nothing will ever come close to the relations in the family because of the closeness that, that it brings.
Yeah, and I think that what you're alluding there too is I would use the word constancy, right? The thing about family is that it's there all the time, right? It's really easy for you to deal with somebody who's a pain in your neck for an hour, maybe, right? Or for 5 minutes when you interact them on Publix or whatever it is, and they're not mean to you, right? They're mean to you, and you say, all right, okay, and you go on,
Mm-hmm.
right? And or the little pain that you feel, oh, it's a discomfort, but then you're gonna be okay. But when it's there constantly, it really tests us, right? It tests us to see whether we can really put in practice the patience that we talk about. Oh, I'm a really patient guy, but then I blow up with my kids all the time, right? So there's a big mirror there, I think, in the family piece to help us figure this stuff out. And I think constancy is really a big key there, which makes things so hard. And it really makes it what I hope that it would. I know that I don't do this either, but I hope that it would lead us to reflection every once in a while and say, why is this happening? Why? What am I supposed to learn from this? Which is like the key question in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm living with somebody who is difficult, like why am I supposed to learn from this? What is my takeaway? And I think that hopefully that helps us zoom out a little bit and understand things. But it is a difficult world, right? Especially nowadays with social media. You said, I mean, that's such a big thing. I think that we also have to understand that everybody is trying to get things right, and sometimes really what they're putting out is what they want for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to have that concept that family is always happy, right? I never seen anybody saying, "Oh my God, today I stumbled and really got hurt," right? On social media, it's really just, for instance, like I never see people traveling on coach on social media. For instance, they all travel business class, right? There's always the accidental, like, "Oh, here's my boarding card," like,
Yeah.
But I never see somebody saying like, "Hey, I'm in the middle seat close to the bathroom, right, today." Like because we want to believe
Right.
that other people can give us the validation that we need for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want to believe that, and so it's really a cautionary tale for us. But I think that it leads us to the bigger question of exactly that, like, what do we want from ourselves and from others, and what is it that we can get from family that we should really think about? And I think that is a fundamental question of life. If we can understand the opportunity that we have and make some time for reflection, at least every now and then, dealing with that kind of stuff might make itself a little bit easier. It won't make the problems go away,
Right.
but it will give us the ability to breathe a little bit and say, all right, I need to be more more understanding. Like, for instance, I'll give you a practical example today. My 11-year-old, one of his chores, he's got very little chores, but one of his chores is when the trash is full, he needs to take the two bins that we have. There is a traditional trash bin and a recycle bin. He needs to take it outside, put it in the respective, bins to be collected. And every single time he does it, he comes back and he doesn't put a new trash bag on, right? And he's done, and he leaves the thing open. And every single time, I'm like, "Come on, dude, trash bags," And I'm like, again, like I have to kind of. And today, I'm like, I caught myself like, all right, let's have a conversation here. Let's find ways of you dealing with the fact that you never remember to put the trash bag on. But I have to to tone my energy back,
Mm-hmm.
right? From saying, "Oh my God, you always do this," right? And so like, what kind of modeling am I sending out if I do this? But I don't always catch myself, but I should be doing a better job, right? So that constancy, that everyday thing, really helps us build the habits that we want. And I think that's what really hard about family is they're there all the time. You know?
Well, your example made me think about the difficult mission of parenting, which in Spiritism we understand it to be a mission, one of the most probably difficult missions that we have. And here we are, imperfect beings, trying to educate other beings who are also imperfect, because we are all imperfect and spiritually and morally compromised in this world of trials and expiations. And one of the things that I hear a lot is parents who are actually committed to do the work of education. And I think you touch on a very important point, which is the ways to educate our children, which example is always going to be the most powerful thing that we can possibly do. But as imperfect beings, we will not be perfect, obviously. And so what do we find in Spiritism that can help us to manage and to deal with our struggles, with our limitations as parents, so that we don't fall into a path of ill self-criticism and frustration and depression and all kinds of things. By the way, he's a parent of an 11 and the other one?
A 6-year-old.
6-year-old, just to
6-year-old.
put in the context here.
Yeah. And I think that's a great question. And sometimes people want like very specific sections of the book because they want to go there and look.
Right.
But I would take a cop-out answer and I'll say everything, absolutely everything about the Spirit's book, about the codification is about education, right? It's about preparing us to educate children through educating ourselves. Kardec has a really cool passage. It's in question 685 about education. And he says, and I have it open here because I always look at this every once in a while. He says that education, not intellectual education, but moral education, not moral education through books, but moral education that consists in the art of forming character, moral education that creates habits, because education is the sum of acquired habits, right? So I think it's really great because it does lots of things, and we can spend a whole hour thinking about this quote, but he's really saying, listen, there is book smarts, there is things you learn and you read about, and sometimes we call that education, and that's part of it. But there is the behavioral part of it, like how do you behave, right? That's what really matters. And at the end of the day, what really creates all of this stuff is our habits, right? The way we treat our kids, the way we treat ourselves, the way we treat others, about the habits we have formed, not only in this life, here's a tricky part, also in past lives, right? And so when dealing with kids, my perspective is based on Spiritism is understanding that, first of all, there's tons of habits at play. There's your habits, right? There's their habits that you have yet not uncovered, maybe if they're little, right? But they are going to bring habits from before, right? Because we do, and so are we. And so it's not so much just distinguishing which habits are formed here or which farmers they bring from before. You can engage in that, but the question is, what kind of habits are we going to work on together moving forward? Because whenever we are working with somebody on a habit, we're also working with ourselves, right? Like if I'm working with my kid on the habit of putting the trash bag on the trash, I'm also working on myself on the habit of being patient and explaining that over and over again, right? And using my tolerance and so forth. And so I think that for parents that are worried about whether they're good enough, whether they're doing good enough, I think that we should move it away from this idea of, am I the value of who I am Is this what's in question here? Now, I think it's easier to break down and say, all right, what habits are we going to work together to get to the places we want to be, right? So it's not about whether I'm good enough of a parent or if I suck or if I'm a great parent. Is, can I focus and identify and focus on some habits that we can work on together? And I hopefully that takes away some of the pressure that we put on ourselves, right? And I think that pressure might also come from other habits we have of judging yourselves and self-worth. And so I like that breaking it down to just habits give us like little small building blocks that we can focus on without being overwhelmed with the whole idea of like, am I good enough? Because let's be honest, we all struggle with the I'm good enough piece. And sometimes we swing to the other side, which is I'm awesome. I'm the best thing in the world, right? You know, there are moments, they're connected. We're just insecure about who we are, which is part of our existence. And so if we can take a step back and say that not everything is in jeopardy all the time about who we are by what we do, it could just be some little habits that we can work on. And maybe that takes the pressure off of, am I a good enough parent, right? And sometimes we discount the good habits we have, right? Maybe I'm not a great parent when it comes to making sure my kid learns the importance of doing his chores with the trash, right? But I have the habit of telling my kid that I love him every single day, right? I forget that sometimes. But I know that from hearing it, right, that at night, he will always know that. So that's something that I do. I think it's good because I didn't have that habit. My parents were great, but they didn't vocalize that habit, right? And so that's a habit that I had to build, right? And so let's give ourselves some latitude in just doing an assessment and audit, like what are some of the habits we have with our kids? And then there's some that are good and some that could be improved on. And hopefully that will make us a little bit less hard on ourselves.
I like that. And personally, I think Spiritism gives us a lot of tools that can help in the management of these, situations, difficult situations that sometimes come up at home. So again, remembering that we as parents have our own childhood wounds.
Yeah.
They are not healed, and the kids are going to trigger them. And a lot of times, these wounds are not fully healed, and they will bleed over our children. So we need to understand, for me personally, and you know me, I like to share a little bit of my own daily experiences. Being a parent has been the most humbling experience of my life. It has really moved me from this place that I thought to be of control, of knowledge, to a place of what I have no idea what's going on here. Some days I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, So it seems bigger than me. But then you have spiritism. Spiritism is going to, there's a spiritism and psychology. I think to myself, I survived my parents, my kids are going to survive me. That is a very nice thing to think about, right? So we want to think that we're doing slightly better than our parents in the sense of, nowadays, for example, we have more resources, we have a better understanding, but yet here we are, wounded creatures trying to, so it comes blind, trying to guide the blind as well, maybe different levels of blindness. But so I think what comes up to me that I try to exercise is compassion, humility, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, self-compassion. And going back to the education piece, I think that it is something that is important to model to our children. Our own difficulties, like yesterday I was telling my son, I told you I was going to do this. We were going to have this action for this behavior. And I failed to be consistent with my own word. So I told him, this is something that I too am learning. So as difficult as it is, and the struggle can be very difficult. We're talking about children, but I think this applies to all challenging relationships in our families. I mean, because although it's a different nature of relationship, I think the learnings, the awareness that Spiritism brings us when we integrate in our daily living helps us to go to this place of increased humbleness and to be able to manifest self-awareness, self-compassion, and the fact that the recognition of our limitations and our own humanity, which also gives the other freedom and a more comfortable place to embrace their own humanity, right? And their own limitations. So I think that Spiritism does a really good job in terms of, one, telling us where we are in our evolutionary path. Two, teaching about, to love God and the others as you do yourself. So it needs to start within you. Forgiveness needs to start with you. Compassion needs to start with you. And then there is one final learning for me that has been pretty significant, which is to understand that we are sowers, but the outcome does not belong to us, and that we are instruments, but there is a much higher force who is organized, is in the control, and also adjusting our time to God's times, in the understanding that we're not going to see all the outcomes that we wish necessarily in this lifetime. So we need to broaden our perspective when it comes to education, to evolution, understanding that our children are spirits who have their own pace, their own experience,
Yes.
as we do
Yeah.
ourselves. So there's
Yeah.
so many ways in which Spiritism, I think, gives us elements that in times of crisis we can tap into and help us to navigate. Like you said, nothing's going to be taken away from us because this is the gist of our existence. This is what we're here for. But it certainly provides us with incredible elements to face the storm.
Absolutely, and I think that you hit the nail in the coffin there on the piece about the two-way streetness of education, right? It's like when we just think about it from a physical perspective, like how we learn from our parents, we have a very self-centered experience, of course, because we were the receiving end. And then when we become parents, I feel like we think that is our turn now to fill their bucket, right? Like to teach them how to do things. And we forget that it's a two-way street. So we are also learning with them. And nothing makes it more obvious than spiritism, because we know that our kids, who are our kids now, they are immortal spirits just like us. They have had different experiences just like us. They are just in junior form, right,
Right.
for the time being, right? But nothing prevents that from us, nothing prevents us from remembering that that is their temporary state. In there is a spirit that maybe is more experienced than we are, or less in different parts, or whatever it is. But they also are bringing things that are going to teach us. We're also placed in this position so that we can learn from that. So we have to gauge exactly what you said, which is, hey, we're also learning this education piece with our kids, right? We're also learning how to be good educators, but for some reason, the patina of the world, the illusion of the world makes us think that we are the ones who need to know it all and we need to kind of give it to our kids. But it's actually quite the opposite. I mean, I see many kids out there who are really holding their parents together,
Mhm.
right? Who are really teaching their parents like how to do things either at a young age, and that is not really common in our perception. We think that we are the ones that have everything, right? So we have to. They're like this empty bucket, and we're supposed to put all our wisdom and all our water in them.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case. I think Spiritism shows us if anything. Now, when they're in mini format, right? When they're in junior form, they are not completely, using all their faculties. We see that, we learn that it takes a while for the reincarnatory process to kind of complete itself. The body needs to grow, the brain forms. There's all these things that we know. And we know that until roughly, we read this on the Andrea Lewis, about 7 years of age, they're a little bit more over there than over here. And then teenage years coming in, hormones coming in, and we start to see more of their true personality, right? And so we know that we have this period of time, if we're lucky, from 1 to 14, right? Like nowadays, and we can talk about it's getting, shorter, whatever it is. But we know that during that part, it's very important for us to be mindful of our habits and their habits and work on this relationship. But we got to make sure that we're easy on us in the terms of like, hey, that's an immortal spirit right there. And here's the immortal spirit too who's learning. We're all learning. As a matter of fact, the immortal spirit over there could have been your grandfather. Who knows, right? Because families are connected. So maybe like also looking at our children not as defenseless little things, which are very cute and adorable, right? Especially when they're little. But also seeing like, hey, here lies an immortal spirit with their shortcomings, their challenges, and we are in this partnership. And we're going to figure things out. My job as a parent is I tell my kids sometimes that, I tell them like I have two main jobs. Whenever they're like being difficult and I start to like say a lot of no's, I'm mindful of how many no's I tell my kids, right? Because I don't want their interaction with me to be no, you can't do this all the time. But sometimes I tell them, I got two jobs. I'm going to keep you safe, and I need to prepare you for the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, when I explain to them why I'm doing things, they are less unhappy, right? Like what I'm doing, or they understand it. But it's a two-way street. And I think what you said was really cool because I'm learning too, right? Our first kid teaches how to be parents in this life. Right. And so you weren't a parent before you had that kid in this life, not that you remember. And you might be bringing all these habits from before, and then you need to untie and undo. So let's give ourselves some slack, but also realize that we need to look at our kids at least part of the time. It's hard when they're little and very cute, but like, they're also coming back here and they're going to be regular size soon. They'll no longer be pint size, right? In a little bit. And they're immortal spirits. And so what are the habits that we need to work on? Because they're different. I have two. I can tell you they're very different. This whole thing about DNA, wonderful, right? But we know the DNA is a manifestation of the spirit because I've got one that is completely the opposite of the other one, right? And they don't need the same thing. They need some of the same things, but the approach to that is different. So how do we ask ourselves, what is it that I need to be a better educator, father, parent to those two little things, right? They're very cute there when they're sleeping. My mom used to say, kids are always very cute when they're sleeping, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a thing that Spiritism brings is this perspective of, yes, our instinct kicks in, we think they're adorable, we love their snuggles, and there lies an immortal spirit that needs our help in navigating these formative parts of life at a young age so that we can curb their bad inclinations as much as possible and help them build as many positive habits as possible, given that we're limited and we are just like saying, like you said, Suzana, like you're sowing the seeds, right? I think the metaphor I like to use for kids, and I'll shut up after this, is we're like launching rockets, right? You have like 2,000 parts that you put together the best possible way because you're in a tight timeline. You build that rocket, you point it the right way, eventually it's going to launch. And when it launches, you can't do anything else other than, Houston, I am the radio here, right? Radio in if you have anything. But after that, now, you're the pilot over there, turn left, it's up to you, right? So it's a tough thing. And learning that is also very hard. Right? Yes. Learning that we are going to have to let go is also very hard in many different ways.
Yes, absolutely. I want to see if you guys, anyone wants to make any comments, ask any questions. Okay, I have a question here on the audience too. Comment. Okay, go ahead. Speak up, please.
Yeah, sure. Regarding the thing with the garbage can and all other little things that kids do or don't do, I was having a problem with my kids that, like as everybody else, I had to say the same thing 4, 5, 10 times, 100 times. and then I realized I could make this somewhat like a game. So I said, listen, he who takes the garbage out puts the bag in. So we're gonna do the he who now. So every time they did the garbage, they didn't put the new garbage bag in. Who forgot to do the he who? And then I wasn't mad anymore, and they were happy, and with and many other things like coming home with a car on I don't know how on fumes only, and then say okay, now we come to the kitchen, everybody, and now we start cooking beans. So what are you doing, Dad? I mean, I gotta go take a shower. No, we gotta finish the beans. But why? The car has no gas. Hope you guys understood this. Beans give you gas. So they will lose a half hour with me in the kitchen, and then they would not bring the car without gas anymore. And it was like that now. Instead of me getting mad and yelling at them and yelling 10 times, now it got easier like that.
Dan, were you able to hear?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I was able to hear that. I love that. And I think that speaks to sort of what we are talking here, which is, can we change our habits? Right? Can we create new habits? And you found a way that works for you and your kids to address the things you wanted to address in a way that it was more lighthearted. Right?
Yep.
And I think that is a great thing. Like, we just have to figure out what is the way that we can do to find, to do that which we need to do. That is, at the end of the day, right? Like, when I tell my kid to put the trash bag in the trash, the primary objective is to put the trash can in the trash. But the true, really objective here, the secondary objective is more important, is I want him to build the habits to be able to make sure that he sees something from the beginning to the end, right? Because he gets a little carried away, dispersed. Kids, that's what it is, repeating many times, like our friend said over there, right? So can we find ways that work with us, for us, and with them to do the high level things that we want them to do? And I think that every parent, if we stop to think about this, we might have some ideas on how can we do things different, or can we try a way that is more lighthearted, or that gets the job done. So I think that is a beautiful thing. There is no manual to being a parent. Right. You got to figure it out. Right. And that's the thing. If there were a manual, we would be born with one. They would come with one. Right. But each kid is different, and you have to find out what works for your kid, given your possibilities, your tendencies. And I think remembering that they are immortal spirits may help you along the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like the Wizard of Oz, where you peek behind the curtain, right? I think some of us are in love with the idea of little kids being this cute little adorable things. I'm not saying that you have to do away with that. No, you can marvel in the idea that they're small, they're cute, they're beautiful, and the instinct is there so that you take care of them. That's beautiful. But every once in a while, we have to think about what is it that they need, and how is it that our relationship with them can give them that. And our friend found a lighthearted way of doing that, right? Maybe we can find that with our kids too.
Right. Carla?
Yeah.
Speak up.
Actually, it's like kind of two questions. What is the role of forgiveness?
What's the role of forgiveness?
Forgiveness to maintain the harmony of the house.
To maintain the harmony of the house.
Permissive, like trying to, not a little kid. Like when a little kid, I have a young adult, like 22 years old. It's hard because you don't have a child anymore. So in the same way, you have to respect that person who's in front of you with their limitations, their conflicts, like I have mine. And it's hard to find, we're being forgiving and using the forgiveness, the role of forgiveness, and maintaining the harmony, but at the same time putting limits. And also, how can the spiritists help so many families facing conflicts like this kind of, with young adults?
Yep. And so I love that question, right? I love that question because I think that it brings forth something that is fundamentally true, and sometimes we forget. It's never really about them. It's about us, right? So when we're talking about because they're going to take our lead. So we are worried about their habits or how we forgive them or so forth. But this question was really self-centered, right? Like in a way that it was centered toward ourselves. That's what I mean by that, which means how do I deal with that behavior? And I think that I want to make a distinction there too, because we talk a lot about forgiveness, but sometimes I think that we misunderstand forgiveness in different ways. Sometimes we think that just forgetting or putting up with somebody is forgiveness. And sometimes that idea just gives us a pass on the fact that we need to confront people about things we're not happy with, right? Forgiveness is when somebody hurts you and you forgive them for something that they've done to you. But sometimes we use the word forgiveness to say like, oh, I should not really bring any consequences because I worry how they will respond. That's not forgiveness, right? That's something else. And so the challenge is, how do we tell apart which one is which? Because I think that there is a place for us to be able to confront, right? Confront people with care, and talk to them and to their kids and say, hey, there is a situation that happened. I don't know if I like this very much. I don't know how I feel. This is how I feel. There are tons of methods that you can kind of use that are not spiritism by nature, but it's important for us to go out and work things out with people and say, we might disagree with this here, but here's how we navigate the stuff, right? So I think there's a role in that to be completely honest, I'm not sure that we were prepared for this, right? When we went to school, we learned intellectual things. I think very few of us, if any, learn how to deal with our emotions and how to figure things out. I'll give you an example. I give this all the time. We tell our kids that if they have a problem with another kid in school, they should go talk to a teacher, right? That's actually not what I think we should do. They should learn to go talk to their little friend and say, I didn't like what you did. And if that doesn't work out, then you go talk to a teacher. But if we tell our kid that every time they have a problem, they should look for a third person to solve that problem for them, then we are not training them on how to advocate for themselves and face the challenges ahead, right? And that's sort of what happened with us. Sometimes we don't know how to solve the emotional entanglement that we have, and we either think that we just have to like put up with it, right? And say nothing because it's gonna upset them, or we blow up, right? Because we don't know how to navigate that stuff. So I think that forgiveness, absolutely there is a place in the house all the time because it's family, right? You have to, you're gonna live with those people, they're gonna hurt you. But I think there is also a place for us to talk to people about what has happened, why is it that we're unhappy, how that makes us feel, and make a request out of them, right? There's lots of different ways that you can do this. If you're interested in more in developing an approach to that, one that I recommend, it's not spiritist, it's called compassionate communication, formerly called nonviolent communication. You go by the same things, but the idea is you notice the fact, you say, I've noticed this fact. Then you say, and he made me feel this way. And I have a need for this. So you need to identify your feelings. I have a need for safety, not to feel this way, not to feel belittled. So I would like to make a request that we do these things differently moving forward, right? So you can practice your whole piece instead of saying like, you always do this all the time, right? And you suck, right? But we have to learn how to deal with that stuff. So yes to forgiveness, 100% yes to forgiveness, but let's not use the idea of forgiveness as a crutch to not tell people and confront them about the actions that we are unhappy with, right? Because part of the family is part of the reason we have a family is giving us that arena that we can work these things out, right? That we can learn how to figure out conflict at a smaller scale. And that's one of the reasons why I love Spiritist groups so much too, because it's sort of like a larger family. In the Spiritist group, you're going to go there and you're going to start doing things, and maybe you bump into somebody, and it will also provide you with a safe environment for you to talk to people who are trying to get better and work these things out. So families have their good use there. Spiritist groups do too, but like we have to practice that conflict resolution piece that we're not used to. Absolutely forgive people in your family, but make sure that you're also letting them know in the most possible and gentle way, that you can, but being true to your words, to your feelings, to your needs about what is it that you need, and have a conversation. It's got to be a conversation, right? That's the benefit of family, and that's why we hate family sometimes. The benefit is We have this environment. People are going to rub us the wrong way. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. But we got to learn something from it, right? Otherwise, God would not have placed us in this family. If God did that on purpose, put us in a family that sucks for us, just to see us, real in pain and frustration, then God would be mean. And by definition, God cannot be mean. God is all good and all loving. So we were placed in a family that has the circumstances for us to work the stuff that we need to. But to do that, we need to identify what is it that we need to, and then work that stuff out. Then I spoke a lot, but hopefully that makes sense. So yes, to forgiveness, 100%. But don't let that become an excuse for you not to confront people with your truth in a kind way that moves the relationship forward.
Yeah, it's a learning process, right? Love is something that we are learning every day. So recently in a conflict at home, my kid was like, "Why are you doing this to me?" Right? So as we place the limits, and it's firm on the limits, why are you doing this to me? So listen to how things are reversed, right? And the answer is, we are doing this to you because I need you to learn that there are rules in the world, there are rules in the universe, they need to be followed. And it's important for you to learn that. And the world out there, it's not going to be as kind to you as we are. And he threw a tantrum, threw himself on the floor, and we just stood to what we have said, because this is love. This is love. And yes, I forgive all the things that were said, because we will say things from a place of rage, from a place of despair, from a place of pain, of frailty. And if you work on not making those things personal, it's really not about you, right? It is the other. Then you can navigate. It's not easy, but one of the things that we can learn is how to go through those things without being shattered by it, without, crumbling down to the ground in face of the difficulties. But you have to be centered that what is love? Love is to provide, limits included, right? And so, and like Dan said, explaining, and there's a moment where, as they grow into youth, the explanation does not go anywhere necessarily in that moment. Then it's the time where you have to separate a little bit too. And that's also love. That's also love. Yeah. So, and forgiveness is the ability to be there, always be there, never losing hope. This is forgiveness for me. Never lose hope in the person, because you're not losing hope on yourself. Never lose hope in the process. Never close the doors of affection, and never lose sight of what life is truly about. And if you keep connected to these concepts, then I think you can find a place of forgiveness within your heart. We have just a few minutes. I just want to bring, as we close here, the little story of the book Jesus in the Home, where the home is compared to an oven, and we are all the hard piece, maybe. I'm trying to remember what is the seed that he uses in the story, but basically the idea is that it is in the heat of the oven, it is in the heat of the family life, that our hardness is made soft. So when Peter asked Jesus about the role of family life, he actually was his mother-in-law asked him, and he talks about, ask her, what is it that you do when you were cooking to get the grain to soften up? And she says, well, master, I put it in the oven. And so he comes up with this analogy, says, well, this is what family life is about. You enter the heat of this daily living so that you can come out soft. So this is what the family life will grant us, these experiences that will soften up our hearts, make us more human, prettier, enlightened, and we come out a better version of our own selves. Then your final words.
I think that does it, right? It's the same with gold. For you to get the gold, you have to heat it to super high temperature so everything else falls up. So there is that heat, there is that rubbing, right? I think I told people a similar story. Like I went to Home Depot and I saw all those nails, and I was trying to do. It was one of my DIY moments, right? Like when I was trying to do stuff by myself for the house, and then I realized that some of them were rusty, some of those nails, and they were really cheap. And so I was like, oh my God, this is going to be wasteful. How are they going to figure this out? And I called the Home Depot guy over, the helper, and he said, oh no, what we do is we get all the rusty nails, we put them in a big container of metal, and then we shake them. And then by rubbing on each other, the rust falls off, right? And so we don't waste them. We don't, right? Because you can't obviously have one person doing this, and it makes no sense. And then I realized, oh my God, we are this big box of nails.
Rusted nails.
Of ours, right? And we are just like put together sometimes so they can rub against each other and come out shining at the end. So just a reminder that, right? Just remind yourself of you. I think that's what Spiritism does best and what's most useful. Remind yourself that you are an immortal spirit. You have gone through many different lifetimes. You have had so many challenging things, way more challenging potentially than you have now. And you were prepared to do the job that you have right now, whatever it is. You have died so many times you don't even remember, right? You are pro of overcoming things. So remember that and have trust that things will work out, because you are empowered to do things that you have in your purview right now. And also, if you are wondering how to do things, it's always worth mentioning, we have the greatest education that ever was, the great educator that ever was, which was Jesus. Look at how he acted in certain moments and see if there's some lessons for us there. Because educator, teacher, was the only title he never refused. Right? People used to kind of try to flatter him and say, oh, good. I'm not good, my father is. Right? But teacher, he said, that I am. Right? So what is it in his behavior, how he treated people and himself? He was firm but kind. Right? If you don't know how to act, try to go back to him and see if you can find an instance in which there was something that he did that was similar to what you were going through. And then hopefully that will help out too. But you, as the immortal spirit that you are prepared to do the things that are in front of you, and you can do hard things. You absolutely can. And I'm so glad that you are spending Sunday morning thinking about this. And thank you for inviting me to share some of that Sunday with you.
Thank you, Dan.